we go. All right, I think we're recording because I see the red light. Hello, Harriet. David Brownstein here.
Hello, David.
How's it going?
Good. I mean, solitary, but good.
Solitary, but good. Yes, the musician's phase of this, our phase of this life. Well, so everybody, welcome to the Music Industry Evolution Summit. I'm your host, David Brownstein, and I would like to introduce you to one of my favorite songwriting teachers and my friend, Harriet Shock.
Thank you.
I'm going to read Harriet's bio for those of you who don't know all these things. Harriet Shock wrote the words and music to the Grammy-nominated #1 hit, Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady, plus many songs for other artists, TV shows, and films. Her songs have been recorded by Helen Reddy, Johnny Mathis, Smokey Robinson, Manfred Mann, Roberta Flack, Lee Greenwood, Carl Anderson, Nancy Wilson, The Partridge Family, thank you very much, and The Little Mermaid, among others. And as a solo artist, she has released 7 albums. She has written the book Becoming Remarkable for Songwriters and Those Who Love Songs, and teaches songwriting worldwide. A documentary about her is currently in pre-production. It's called Hollywood Town, The Harriet Shock Story. Welcome, Harriet.
Thank you.
The more formal welcome.
Yeah.
So it's before we get into like speaking about the moment and creativity in the moment, what were some of the first musical influences for you? What got you started on? When did music really get into you and come out of you?
Well, people may not be able to hear it in my music, but I consider Ray Charles my major influence. There's just something about the way he interprets something that even if he didn't write it, it is so soulful that when I'm writing a melody, I just want to go there, So I don't know obviously Carole King was an influence. I'm a piano player.
On Ray Charles, do you imagine how would Ray Charles sing it or how would he write it? Tell me more about what you just said about Ray Charles.
There's just a beingness of Ray Charles that embodies the song in a soulful way, that even if the song were not written soulfully, somehow when he sings it, it sounds like it. Like, I don't know if you ever heard him sing country, but even when he sings country, it sounds soulful as opposed to twangy, Now, I don't write country. Some of my songs could go pop country, but because I have an accent, when I first started, they put me on stage with Waylon Jennings and stuff. And because when I talk, I sound like I would, but I am much more influenced by Ray Charles singing, what I say than I am Waylon Jennings.
That's great. I mean, I love Ray Charles. There's so many artists from the past that I wasn't focusing on who wrote their material because I heard it when I was younger, and I just thought it instantly came out of the singer's mouth, right in head. What do you think about his writing style? What do you have to say about his writing style?
Well, it's hard to know with Ray if he wrote it or not, because when I was little, I didn't ever know that the singer didn't write the songs.
Exactly,
I'm like the rest of the world now. They all still think that. But when he sang Georgia, obviously he didn't write that, but it was just so his. It's like I remember hearing that when Otis Redding heard Aretha sing his song of Respect, he said, "It's hers now." That's probably the way anyone would feel hearing Ray Charles sing his or her song. It is his now.
Yeah.
Maybe even Willie Nelson. I don't know.
So how has it been for you as a songwriter when you hear get one of your songs cut and covered by somebody else? You've had some great successes. What's that been like for you as a songwriter?
It's been wonderful. The thing is, when Helen Reddy heard my version of Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady on the radio, she decided to record it, which I'm very grateful she did, because she already had a name. She was easy to put on the radio. So I had a hit, which my parents could be aware of. And that was, helpful to me. but it was a bit of a disappointment because my version of it was set to go on the radio the year before, and the music director quit the Friday before it was going on 2 top 40 stations. My record label, 20th Century Fox, is still talking about how they lost that record. So my career would have been different if I had had the hit. But as I say, I was anonymous all the way to the bank. So it was helpful.
That's great. That's great. So go ahead.
There were other people, like when Johnny Mathis sang one of my songs and he didn't know it quite yet, I got to be in the studio with him, cutting the track, singing in the vocal booth with him. That was like a dream come true because I used to hold his records as a child and walk around the house. Wow. So various, there are certain covers that I wasn't as fond of that I won't mention. But for instance, when the Partridge Family sang my song, that guy is so soulful. People have no idea. I mean, he was just great. And so I'm always pleased that someone cares enough about my song to record it. If they don't do it exactly like I would have wanted it done, I don't usually mention that.
Wait, what was your Partridge Family cut?
Oh, that's the way it is with you.
Oh, wow.
It was on their bulletin board album and it was on the TV show. But David Cassidy was a killer singer.
Yeah, he was great. That's great. Cool. I didn't know. That's funny. I didn't know you had a Partridge Family cut until I read this today. That was great. Well, okay. So you're interesting. You're one of the first writing teachers I know that was starting to work virtually in a way. You were starting to teach songwriting, and I met you. I took one of your classes in your dining room. I've taken that twice. But you were the first person I ever heard saying, well, I work with people who live out of town by email. And I was just like, really? Tell me about that. So how did you start doing that, and how did that go? And tell me about that process for you.
Well, I think it just came of necessity. I taught for USC in 1986 when they told me they weren't going to offer it if I kept saying no, because I said it can't be taught. And then I decided, okay, I guess it can. So the next year I said yes. I did that for a couple of years, but driving to USC and trying to find a parking place, that was a deal breaker. So I started teaching for the Songwriters Guild of America, who had an office in Hollywood. And then when they closed that office and went to Nashville, I just continued teaching privately around my dining room table. But in the meantime, people around the world had contacted me and said they wanted to study. And, there was no Zoom classes in the 80s. So I started offering it online by private email. It's still done one-on-one. And sometimes it takes them like a couple of years to get through all of my steps. It generally only takes 10 weeks, but however long it takes. And then I would email them the next assignment after reviewing what they did, because there are steps, as you remember, that build on each other. So I put a lot of people through this course. Now, the people who are out of town still want to do it by email. They don't necessarily want private lessons by Zoom because, first of all, it's more expensive. And secondly, who needs to look okay? Do it at midnight when you're in your pajamas.
Right. I love it that you originally thought, well, this can't be taught. And then you found a way that you actually quite well does. Well, that's a bad sentence.
Well, yeah, I trick people into doing what I do, what I've learned to do over the years, which is basically continue communicating instead of falling off into a foreign language of songwriting, which they can barely say the pen is on the table, but they want to talk about the meaning of life. So if you keep them speaking English and music instead of songwriting, you have them. And then by the time they get to the 8th step, they have a song and I've tricked them and they go, oh, it's so much easier, but you tricked me. So,
it's a benevolent trick.
Yes.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing and sensing about this time in terms of songwriting and music business and collaboration. We're all locked down in front of our Zoom cameras or our laptops and our phones. And what do you see happening and how about creativity and creation? Just what do you think about that now?
Right. Well, David, when you first told me about this, I thought, oh, well, by the time this happens, it's all going to be open. Everything's going to be, oh my heavens. What I have to keep telling myself is there was always a new normal after every major thing. Remember, after 9/11, the new normal at the airport was quite different from the way it was before. So you just have to decide that there's a way to deal with this, and maybe it won't always be this way. My problem at the moment is this documentary is going to be made, and the filmmaker wants to base it, the heart of it will be a live show, because that's what he saw that made him decide to make this film. So if I can't get into a club with an audience, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, because it won't work virtually. It's my interaction with the audience that he's trying to capture. So I think it'll work out. But anyway, as far as what I'm doing right now, I have 2 LA songwriting workshops, which are starting, and they're going to be virtual. They're going to be on Zoom. But I have, somebody from Portland and somebody from someplace else. Someone from England wanted to take it, but it's 7 to 10 LA time, which would be 5 o'clock in the morning. And so she decided against it. But I can see people performing. A lot of my friends are doing shows and having tip jars and all of that. Mm-hmm. That's not my choice, but somehow it's working. The problem is doing things together. When I have cello, flute, violin, backup singer, and bass, and these people can't play together. I don't know if you know anything about Jammer, but I haven't seen any reviews, and I don't really know anyone who's using it. Well, but I don't know. Do you know what?
I'm hearing that Jam Kazam was made 6 or 7 years ago, and it's starting to have a new life. When the pandemic just started, I was looking into that, and friends of mine were looking into that. I think they've updated that thing, and I just saw this morning. I just saw this morning Carlos Santana, John McLaughlin, and a bunch of artists doing a quarantine blues, and everyone's shooting it in their own space and syncing it up later.
Yeah, well, if you see a headphone in someone's ear, it's not live. I'm sorry, they were given the track.
Well, no, you can't do it live. You can't do it live yet. We don't have the bandwidth. But here's what I really wanted to ask you: is like one of the things we talked about. That we're in this new normal as creators, as songwriters, as producers, and artists. There was a quote that you told me from Henry Jaglom that I wanted to get back into here. I'm trying to set you up as gracefully as I can.
No. Actually, Henry was quoting Orson Welles.
Yes.
And Orson very wisely said, "The enemy of art is the absence of limitations." And it's true, if you have all the options in the world, how do you make the decisions? But if you have a lot of obstacles and things, and you have to figure out how to do it within it. That's why I just saw The Vast of Night, this very low budget sci-fi movie. It was out of this world, but apparently maybe their budget made them do things more creatively or something. But sometimes having all these limitations will create amazing results. I personally have not solved the problem of not having a live audience, because I'm jonesing for that, I'll tell you. Right.
I mean, have you seen any, have you seen artists online? I've seen Rickie Lee Jones in her living room, and it's not what she expected, not what I expected, but it's surprisingly intimate because frankly, she's telling longer stories about the writings of the songs and the giving birth of these songs, and there's a different intimacy that's happening. And I never knew the backstory quite so much on Last Chance Texaco, for example.
Right. No, I think that is interesting. That's pretty much what I do in my live show anyway. So if I guess I could do that at home alone, but for me, the experience of being in the middle of like a chamber quartet is like half of the joy of it.
True.
So yeah, I could do that.
And what are you seeing with your students and co-writers about writing collaboratively now? How is that changing, and what are some of the creative solutions around that you're seeing?
Well, I think they're just doing what they always did. They work either via email and sending each other things, or they both have the same program and they send things back and forth, or they have a Zoom meeting. I don't see any reason to continue having Zoom meetings with people you can just email or talk to on the phone. I think I'm zoomed out, but maybe it's just because I'm teaching 2 classes by Zoom and a lot of things. But I think it's a great deal. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, sure.
And thank heavens we have it now. I wish I'd bought stock in it. That would have really been good. But I think people are collaborating pretty much the way they always did. The problem is they can't be in the studio together. Now, some people like to collaborate, build the track together, do a lot of that stuff together. They probably can't now. So that's the only problem I see.
Well, it seems that so many of the tools that have developed have been maybe sidebar projects or sidebar tools. Now, since we can't get together in person, now we must Zoom, or we must send tracks. We must collaborate in a different kind of way. And I know like Charlie XCX, the pop artist, she just released her new record, and she said it's the fastest record she's ever done, and producers that she always wanted to work with just sent her tracks, and she never, their calendars never coincided, so suddenly everyone's locked down. And she's getting tracks and she's spitting it out, and she did an album in 3 months, her fastest ever.
Yeah, is she a top line writer? Is that how she does?
Both. She does top lining. More so on this. I'm not exactly sure if she plays instruments. She's known for mostly top line things, but she's had a very unique stuff of her own artist albums, and then the stuff that she's done with pop artists are basically hooky top liney sorts of things.
Yeah, well, for instance, I don't collaborate a lot. When I write with Arthur Hamilton, who wrote Cry Me a River, I write the melody to his lyric already written.
Okay.
When I write with Misha Siegel, he gives me the melody and I write the lyric. Mostly I just write both of them by myself. So there's no problem collaborating with everything closed down, because I'm not usually in the room with that person. But for other people, I tell you, you sent me that thing with Chris Bradley.
Oh, yeah.
That was the best thing ever. I mean, I love her.
Yeah.
And I'm now doing all these tracks.
You are great.
I'm building them just like she's amazing. Thank you for sending that.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it. She's amazing. She makes it really simple. And a lot of artists who maybe didn't do as much by themselves on their DAW are, I saw on a Grammy thing, Alicia Keys' engineer was saying she's had to teach Alicia how to use her DAW and to set up her studio by Zoom, do it by yourself. So artists who are used to having a team are now going, wait a minute, which menu is it? Where's the button?
I know. I thought, maybe I should get Logic instead of GarageBand. Maybe I need to update my iPad. And then I thought, wait a minute, let's see if you can do it with the GarageBand you have on that antique iPad first before you start spending more money. And believe it or not, she made it so simple. I just love her.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Good. I can't wait to tell her. That's great. That's great. That's cool. So what else are you seeing about this moment in time? What kind of songs maybe are coming out or need to be coming out, or how do artists address the change of time we're in from the marches to the health pandemic to just what's going on in the zeitgeist of the world's soul? Harriet, please solve the problems.
I'm telling you. I mean, I see a lot of the songs that people are writing because they send them to me step by step in my classes and stuff, and everybody wants to address that. But, it's so hard to have a point of view that will alienate half the public you're singing to and endear you to the others, unless you just use I all the time and take responsibility for the viewpoint. But please stop lecturing me. You know, I can't stand songs like that under any circumstances. But as far as wanting to say something, we are all very emotional right now, not only because we've been pinned up, but because of all of the things that are happening. And, you know, we want to write about it. So I just figure my advice is get that song out of your system and then write something else, because it's sitting there. It's in the way of what else you might want to write. And we all have strong feelings about it. So we should probably put it into our art.
Well, you know, interestingly, like just to go back to Charlie XCX again, because she did extensive liner notes, surprisingly, on this record about what was going on with her. And she's more vulnerable and open in her lyrics than she usually is. It's usually about parties and drinking and being out all night and stuff. And she's talking more on this record about what she's talking about with her therapist. Her therapist makes an appearance in 3 songs. So it's interesting. So she's expressing, she's working out what she's feeling, what she's into her stuff now, which she probably wouldn't have if she was sitting in a room with 8 other people going, let's talk about a party again.
Right. Yeah. I know Mickey Newberry used to be asked, why are all your songs sad? He says, because when I'm happy, I'm out having a good time. When I'm sad, I'm home writing. So I'm not sure if people are maybe more introspective now.
Yeah.
The writers I work with are always writing from real emotion. So it's not unusual for me to see that, but to see a lot of these pop artists decide to be introspective and speaking their true feelings, I think it's refreshing.
Yeah, I do too. What are some, I mean, I know without getting to the details of your steps, what are some recommendations you'd have for artists, to writers, to go a little deeper than they tend to, or to, I don't know, just to get to the heart of where they're really at?
Well, that's a good question. Nick Venet was a huge influence on me and produced 2 of my albums before he passed away. And he used to say, go to the dark corner in your attic that you're afraid to go to, because that's where the song is. And as far as your psyche or your emotional life is concerned, that's true, because before you write the piece of fluff you think is going to sell millions of records, which it probably isn't anyway, but before you get to that, there's something you truly want to say sitting there, so you might as well address it. And I'm not talking preachy here. I'm talking about that thing that is uniquely yours, your story that no one else could tell. And people think, oh, if I talk about that, it's just way too personal. It'll never be universal. Quite the opposite. You know, people want to be so general so everyone will relate to it. No one relates to it because it isn't personal enough. It isn't specific enough. As Natalie Goldberg says, you know, don't say the cat in the window, say the Siamese in the window. So the more you can be specific, the better. And so, yeah, okay. In film, I know they want the chorus, the big general chorus. That's all they're going to use anyway, usually. So you can be specific in the verses, because if you do these general songs in concert, people are going to be talking to each other at the table. They're not even going to be listening. So you might as well tell your story, because it's really all you've got.
Well, yeah, I think you sort of alluded to it, but there's the quote, the more personal is the more universal, right? Is what you're saying.
If you do it right.
If you do it right. How is it just how does an artist or a writer be more specific, but also go to the dark corners without saying, oh, I feel so blah, 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 you know? I agree with you. It's like, how do we find those images that I mean, the journey to the dark corner is not the journey we want to make, because it's not so much fun. And yet that's how we grow as a human. And that's how we grow as an artist, when we can have something to say once we've been sitting in that dark corner for a little while.
Well, I'll give you an example. I hope she doesn't mind. I'm not telling you who she is.
Yeah, okay.
But I have a student who's the daughter of a priest, a Catholic priest. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of no. So she had never written about it. It affected her life in a way you can only imagine. And when she finally got that song written, it was just like her whole life changed. Because when you communicate about something you have been trying not to face, you have to go there. You have to get the pictures that tell the story. And in doing so, the way out is the way through. And the same thing happens when you write about a person you really love. Like I wrote a song for my sister. Well, I've written about all my family, but what happened was I went to a place so intimate, because the creative process is very intimate. It affected our relationship forever. I mean, we were always close, but after I wrote that song, it was just like, wow. And so you'll find that if you write that very personal thing, even if it's to one person, it can totally change your relationship with the person. It can change your viewpoint on life and everything else. And sometimes that relationship is a dark corner you don't want to go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, I love what you just said about telling the story through pictures, and I think that's something you talk about in your classes. It's a little bit of a cinematic way of looking at things, and what's the close-up, what's the wide shot, what's the
right.
Yeah, telling it through pictures is great.
I had a student who was a fireman, and he said people would run back into burning buildings for their picture collection. The mind is made of pictures, and if you give someone the pictures, like where were you, what did it look like, who was there, what were they wearing, then you put them in the scene. If you just talk in generalities, they won't be there. They won't even be, like a lot of people at open mics, they were there, so they're emoting about something with no pictures, and no one is listening to them because they saw the movie, but these audience members weren't even in the theater. They have no idea what they're talking about. But if you, like Tori Amos, for instance, she gives so many pictures. Sometimes you don't know what the heck she's talking about, but there's so many pictures, you feel your own life into those pictures. That's what pictures do for you.
Yeah. It's funny. Tori Amos just wrote a book called Resistance about her songwriting, about her life and not life in politics, but I don't know. I've started reading it. It's each chapter has a lyric and then what was going on in her life and what that song means and what the song has come to mean from when she wrote it to now. And yeah, so I'll let you call that Tori's imagery.
Yeah, mystery solved.
Have your own songs? Have you had songs that meant one thing to you when you first wrote it and the meaning evolved and changed?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I co-wrote with Misha Siegel the love theme song for The Last Dragon. It was a Motown film, and I couldn't figure out what I had in common with this young man, African-American, virgin, had never been in love, was in the ghetto, and studying Kung Fu. I thought, oh boy. But instead of trying to put myself in his shoes, which obviously wouldn't have fit me, I thought, what do we have in common? Oh, he meets Vanity, the character played by Vanity, and falls in love. Okay, well, I've been in love for the first time. What was that like? So we wrote a song called First Time on a Ferris Wheel, which about 35 people have sung now, because even though to me it was the first time I fell in love with a particular person, but it worked perfectly for the film. So that's probably not a good example because both of us were falling in love for the first time. But sometimes, yeah, I mean something really specific. Like I wrote a song for my mother that Helen Reddy also recorded. And when she ends her show with it, she's thinking about her mother, But right. When my mother went to her show and went backstage, she let Helen know that she was the mother that was written about.
You're singing my song, young lady.
That's right. So, yeah, we all have our own lives in our minds when we write it, but just because the car was a Prius and not a a pickup truck, or, you know, the shirt was blue instead of pink. It doesn't matter, because you can change the facts to tell the truth. As long as you're telling the truth in the song, other people will relate.
Right, right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. We're going to talk about your free giveaway here.
Oh.
But first, anything else you want to add or suggest, or just anything, I don't know, anything we missed, or you want to?
Well, I'm going to read something I read Quincy said.
Oh,
Quincy
Quincy.
Jones. I'm going to quote Quincy. He said, I mean, come on, man. The technology is a tool. You have to know what you're building to utilize the tool properly. And then I'm talking about all of the stuff we're using now. And then he said, that goes back to your earlier question about theory. As a musician, the technology can allow you to evolve. But if you don't fully understand music, you end up working for the technology instead of the technology working for you. That is so true, because I find a lot of people are very interested in getting all of the technology down to write a song, and then they forget that melody and lyrics are involved.
Yeah,
Storytelling.
Yeah. How has the technology affected your writing and your writing, your work, your creative side?
Well, you know, if you build a track and then write a melody over it, it's considerably different from if you just go to the piano and your fingers do what they usually do. So it's enabled me to write a different kind of song. As far as teaching, it's enabled me to have people on my screen who are not in LA, who are in my class now. And there are a lot of different things that technology can do, but so far we have not managed to have the same interaction as a performer does with an audience who is sitting there. And I'm really hoping that gets solved soon.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge that we're all working it out every day. There's a new a new attempt at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. There's a woman journalist named Sherry who writes. She's a music journalist. She's starting to envision what might live performance be like in the future, or in the what things are being required in the lockdown phase will be able to be interesting enough to transform what live performance will be like. And she's talking about things that are in video games, like Travis Scott's visit to this video game Fortnite, and I don't know, something new is kind of happening, and it's for certain kinds of music that's great, and for more immediate live performance and live jamming and live playing with the band, we still have to work that part out, obviously.
Yeah, but I think some of what we're learning now we can use in the future. For instance, if you have a killer show, pretty much everything's going to be videoed now. You know, you can't, it happened and it's gone is sort of something in the past, because if you have a record of it, you can post it and then people can enjoy it in the future and stuff. Of course, they always had that, but now everybody is taping everything for the future. Even these performances that people are giving with the tip jar, they put them on again and put another tip jar up.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Well, yeah. It's funny. You reminded me of Quincy Jones. There's a quote from him. He's like, "The only thing that changes about pop music is the drum sounds."
I remember, I worked with Berry Gordy of Motown, and he said that Michael Jackson would call him and play him melodies for Thriller, and then Michael and he was giving him feedback, and then of course Quincy was the final say, and Michael would say, I just brought him the best melodies I could, and boy did he ever. Because people forget, a lot of these top line writers over 2 chords, I'm amazed what they can come up with over 2 chords. But Michael used other chords, and that's why we're still listening.
That's what it is. Yes. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Harriet. So tell me about what we're gonna do a free giveaway for your book. Tell me about your book, please.
Oh, well, I have a very short ebook. I have a regular book called Becoming Remarkable, which you can contact me and I'll sell you. But this one is free. I would love for you to have it. It's a little ebook about writing from the heart. And I'm trying to convince you that it's a good idea. But for the most part, people are afraid of it. But I give you some examples of why it's a good idea. And I think it's a pretty easy read. And I would absolutely love for you to have it. I had it designed by my web designer, and it's on my website.
Beautiful.
All you
Beautiful.
have to do is give me your email address, and it's all yours.
That's great. Thank you so much. No, everyone's gonna get. There's a link to the free gift that you can get that and get Harriet's free book. And for those of you on the summit, please comment on the Facebook page. What did you learn? What did you appreciate? If you have more questions for Harriet, maybe we can get Harriet to answer some of these questions for you. And she's a wonderful teacher and been doing the virtual writing thing for a long time. So, and I have sent friends and colleagues to her over the years. So I'm really so happy you could be with me today, Harriet.
I'm so happy that you asked me, and I'm very eager to watch all of the other people and hear what they have to say. I'm just dying to.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's going to be great. It's going to be really great. All right, I'm going to find the stop button. And thanks for Harriet for being part of the summit. And
Thank you, David.
We're right with you all. Thanks.